Our next group is focused on water infrastructure and has been working with Professor Irene Nielson for the past period of time here. And I think they look eager and ready to communicate with you.
My name is Tim Grose. I'm going to talk about the Water Infrastructure Resiliency and Sustainability Act of 2011. I'd like to thank our faculty advisor, Irene Nielson, our team leaders, Matt Babcock and Kristen Takara, and all of the rest of our group for all their hard work. So first I'm going to get into the problem and then talk about what some of the solutions to this problem are, and then how our bill, which is a grant-making program, enables some of these solutions, and then how we design the program. So the problem is that the climate's changing and we don't have the water infrastructure to handle this change. Expected conditions are changing, so those are just the conditions that have the highest probability of occurrence that correspond with the peaks of these bell curves here. And at the same time, the probability of extreme conditions is also changing, so those that correspond with the tails of these curves. And the shape of these curves can change too. It can flatten or skew, increasing our uncertainty about future conditions. This particular graph was taken from a set of similar graphs put out by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So this is affecting different regions in different ways. In the Northeast, where expected precipitation is increasing, we're seeing a higher likelihood of heavy precipitation events. And in the Southwest, where expected precipitation is decreasing, droughts are becoming more likely. And what's more is that this is going to continue to change. How much, we're not entirely sure, but we know that our infrastructure isn't designed to handle increasingly frequent extreme conditions. So Hurricane Sandy taught us that on this part of the Atlantic coast, we're not ready for storm surges and rising sea levels. And without flood protection, our other vital infrastructure can fail as well. We were reminded that in the case of power outages, almost all of our infrastructure is vulnerable. Sandy left many without drinking water or with lower quality drinking water. And here, 2 young Brooklyn residents found a fire hydrant to tap into. This is a wastewater treatment plant in Maryland that was damaged by flooding. And that type of damage can also compromise water quality for a large portion of a population. And in many of our croplands, so America's breadbasket, we're seeing more and more drought. So according to the U.S. Drought Monitor, almost 2/3 of the continental U.S. experienced at least moderate drought this summer, which is actually one of the costliest natural disasters on record for us. And in California, the state that introduced this bill, melting snowpack has reduced the availability of fresh water. And this is exacerbating the effects of aging infrastructure. And this picture here shows a main break in Los Angeles, where one of the city's old cast iron pipes couldn't handle daily fluctuations in water pressure. So the American Society of Civil Engineers gave U.S. drinking water infrastructure a D- in 2009. There's an $11 billion funding gap each year. And the 2 major federal revolving loan funds only provide about $2 billion a year worth of funding. So how can we address these? Well, we need some new tools, or at least new ways to use existing tools. So let's just go through some examples. Well, we can use geospatial analysis to look at how green infrastructure technology can be applied to low-lying urban neighborhoods. This can be green streets like the one shown here, it can be green roofs. These aren't new technologies, but we can use this kind of analysis to determine how to apply them more effectively. We need research on whether massive infrastructure projects like New York City floodgates are really a viable option. This one here is from Holland. And then in coastal areas that are prone to flooding, we can use restored or engineered wetlands to act as a buffer for storm surge. This is Cape May, New Jersey here, and notice the residential neighborhoods in the background of the picture. And then in dry regions, we really need to focus on water efficiency. We can pilot new drip irrigation systems and use increasingly sophisticated metering to optimize our water use. This is a screenshot of a risk analysis software tool developed by the United States Environmental Protection Agency called CREATE. And it's meant to give water operators a way of taking climate risks into account when they're designing and maintaining infrastructure. But using this tool and adhering to its suggestions takes resources, and we want to increase the capacity of operators. So how do we get to these solutions? Well, the bill calls for a grant-making apparatus that will fund projects designed to make U.S. water systems more resilient. It sets aside about $50 million a year maximum. And that doesn't seem like much, but this is a grant-making program, whereas most infrastructure funding comes in the form of loans that need to be repaid over time. And there's also matched funding, so the program will match up to 50% of any project's given costs. And this new stream of grants allows water systems at immediate risk to changing conditions to jump the long queue of traditional infrastructure funding. And it calls for projects from different regions of different sizes and in different phases. So by phases, we just mean it could be a research project on the viability of New York City floodgates. It could be a hard infrastructure design. It could be increasing maintenance capacity. So how do we implement? Well, the National EPA office will set up grant criteria. They'll set up the competition and then have a national application pool to encourage lots of competition. We want to concentrate as many of the administrative duties on the national level as possible so that we're not replicating the same tasks 10 different times at the EPA's 10 regional offices. And the national office will also set up 2 different budget tiers to try to encourage a diverse array of projects. And then since the regional offices know what their jurisdictions need the most, they're going to play a large role in selecting the actual projects to fund. And hopefully at the end of the day we'll have both the regional and national offices develop some sort of institutional memory so that they can tackle these types of problems in the future. So this is a map of the 10 EPA regions. And at the national level we'll have 12 staff, 1 program manager and 10 program officers pulled in part-time from existing departments, and then an external communications consultant. And at the 10 different regions, we'll have an average of about 6 project officers, and we can adjust this depending on how many applications we receive from each region. For instance, in California, we'd likely see more applications due to climate change awareness, due to the current congressional delegation there, given that this is a relatively partisan bill. So let's take, for example, a water systems operator in Oklahoma that services farming communities and wants to install new water meters for its drip irrigation systems. And this is just a relationship diagram of how the operator, the national office, and the regional office would interact. So the operator would send an application directly to the national office, and then the national office who's administering the program will share that pool of applications from that region with the regional office, in this case Region 6. And then that way the regional office can help select which projects to fund. And then once, assuming this project is selected, the national office would disperse funds directly to that project. But the regional office would be responsible for overseeing the project and collecting monitoring and evaluation data, and in turn reporting back to the national headquarters once per year. So this program design allows 98% of the funds to go to the grants themselves. And of those 2%, that small slice of administrative costs, most is going to go to salaries. All right, so what do we need to remember? Well, our water infrastructure is aging, and it's designed for stable conditions. But as climate conditions are changing, the likelihood of extreme conditions is increasing. And we need different and innovative solutions to meet the needs of our individual regions. Right now, with recent floods, storms, and droughts, there's a policy window. So there's a favorable time to push otherwise partisan legislation. This grant program aims to address immediate risk, and it's designed to take advantage of national and regional expertise and fund a diverse array of projects. With $50 million a year matched to $100 million over 5 years, we're looking at $500 million worth of innovative projects that hopefully we can scale up in order to adapt our water infrastructure to an increasingly changing planet. Thank you very much.
Yes, that was great. What was the rationale behind choosing either small projects or large projects, rather than a graded scale of projects or a spectrum?
Right. Well, I think we just wanted to make sure that we had projects of different scales. We wanted to if there were projects with a $1 million or $100,000 budget, a $50,000 budget, we wanted to give them an opportunity to apply for grants. And the problem with having sort of just one big tier is that would encourage projects from the upper limit of our budget tier. So if we had an open budget, our two budget tiers were 50,000 to 200,000, and then one was 500,000 to 2 million. So if we just had the whole range up to 2 million, we'd expect to see mostly projects at the upper end of that limit. So that's why we separated it.
So, nice presentation, Tim.
Thanks.
It seems like there's a lot of staff here. 6 new staff across all the regional offices and some national
So-
staff, or are those not new staff?
So they're not new staff. The 10 officers at the national level are from existing departments, and all the 6 in each of the regions are also from existing departments. So we're bringing them in full time. So all of our budget's based on regional staff spending about 6 hours per grant application, because that's where we need most of that staff at first, is to handle that application intake.
So is the thought then that some of the budget here is paying for that time, or that they're taking that time away from other priorities, the existing staff?
Yeah, so the budget here is paying for that time. Yes, it may also take away from other priorities, but we have the money to do that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Tim. Great presentation.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask if you can elaborate a little bit more on the transparency mechanisms that will be set in place for the selection of the projects.
Right, so I think we don't have a specific transparency mechanism in place, but the national office will establish the grant criteria. So they'll establish how we're going to measure which projects are at immediate risk to changing conditions. And then with that criteria, the regional offices will have to adhere to that criteria when they're helping select the individual grants themselves.